looking at the wrong time.
It's not good. Right, okay, right then. We're laughing so hard because the swimmers were over there, and as I looked around, the lady was bending over, and so I had to look away very quickly.
Oh, no, you didn't.
I did. I was very discreet. Right, stop. Okay, so here we go.
Hi, it's Karen from I Do Canals.
And I'm Simon, and it's
2023.
Happy New Year. It's New Year's Day today, and where are we?
We're at the seaside.
We're at the seaside.
I brought my bucket of spades.
Oh, you haven't?
I have.
No, you can't make sandcastles out of this.
I can make sandcastles out of that.
I think you might have to stick it together with a lot of weed and stuff. What's that?
It's the sea.
Okay, calm down. We're not going in. Not like those silly persons over.
I've got my swimming.
Don't do it. Don't go there.
Okay.
We're not here to talk about the sea. About 25 miles that way is France. And we like France, don't we?
We do.
We've been there a few times. They've got a couple of sticky politicians, so have we. However, if you go back to the late 1700s, early 1800s, there was a chappie over there, a little short fellow with a funny hat.
His name was Napoleon.
Napoleon Bonaparte, that's the one. And the Napoleonic Wars were in full swing. And Mr. Napoleon, or Monsieur Napoleon, he had his greedy little eyes on England. He was already taking over lots of Europe, and he was having a pop at Russia, and but standing in his way was our phenomenally famous Lord Nelson, Admiral Lord Nelson, and the Royal British Fleet, 27 ships of the line. But that's not what we're here to talk about either. They'll come into it, but what are we here to talk about? What's over there?
The Royal Military Canal.
The Royal Military Canal. We're going to have a look at that. It's not connected to the National Canal Network. It's standalone, and it's very different, and there's lots and lots of different things about it. So we're going to go and have a look at that. We're going to go down the coast a little bit first, and we're going to have a look at the Martello Towers.
I'd love to live in one of them.
Yeah, you wouldn't be able to put anything in a corner.
I'll find a way.
Yes, you probably would. So we'll have a look at one of those, and then we're going to go over to a few spots of the canal, the Royal Military Canal. We're going to look at how it was set up as a defence. It was the third line of defence. There were 4 lines altogether. We're going to look at that. It's a cold day, it's a windy day. Hopefully it will stay dry, because I want to put the drone up over there if we can. If not, we'll do it from ground-based photography. But let's go and have some fun. Come on, let's go.
Then. This is the end of the Royal Military Canal where they started to build it.
Wow, absolutely phenomenal. Where are we then?
I don't know. Where are we, Simon?
Well, we're just outside of Hythe. Hythe is that way, and you've got the coastal seawall over here, Folkestone a little bit over that way, and Dover a bit further down. Or that way, in fact, Dover is.
Who built this?
Who built this? Very good question. The idea was conceived in 1804 by Lt-Col John Brown, who was of the Royal Corps Staff Engineers, and he decided we should build this as one of the lines of defences against the Napoleonic army landing on Romney Marshes and obtaining a bridgehead and a foothold to invade England. This bit here is one of the longest stretches, and it's about 700 or 800 yards. Almost all the other bits are in sections with a little kink between of about 500 yards. We're going to look at that. It's a really clever defensive strategy.
Is it navigable?
It's not. It used to be. When this was built, it was 60 feet wide, it was 9 feet deep, and everything they dug out, they piled up onto a rampart on the landward side as an additional line of defence. But rather than talk about that here, I think we should go and have a look at the Martello Towers,
yeah.
And then there's a bit inland that we're going to go and look at, and we're really going to look at how this was built and how it was such a strong defensive strategic installation. Let's go. Martello Tower number 24 stands behind the modern-day seawall just off Dymchurch High Street, and was just one of 74 towers constructed along the south coast of England between 1805 and 1812 to resist the threat of Napoleon's invasion. There were 22 Martello Towers, numbers 9 to 30, between Rye and Seabrook. Many have been lost to the sea or demolished. A few have been converted to private homes. Martello Tower number 24 is considered to be the best surviving example, and it can be seen in a condition very close to that when occupied by the military in 1806. The design of the tower was simple, with the seaward walls thicker than those to landward. That was to resist cannon shot fired from the sea. Each tower had a 24-pounder cannon that rotated on a very special gimbal. It had a range of almost a mile with an arc of overlapping cannon fire from a line of towers. Each tower also had 3 18-pounder howitzers that fired 4.5-pound airburst shells over landing troops. You can just imagine how difficult it would have been to land an army here on the beach. Apologies for the wonky horizon. The wind was quite strong. My drone had to battle just to keep level. You can see the distance here between the two towers is about 750 yards. The 24-pounder cannons on each one had that devastating overlapping field of fire. The 22 towers protecting Romney Marsh presented a seriously strong defence to any invading army. An enfilade. Earlier on, I mentioned the word enfilade. An enfilade is a military standpoint by which your opponent is funneled towards you down a canyon, a gully, through a narrow stretch of trees, or in this case, a length of canal. And the length here, from here to the next kink, is about 500 yards, as it is the other way. And gun emplacement here, even light guns of sort of 18-pounders to 24-pounders, would have made mincemeat of any oncoming forces. Here we are looking in the opposite direction, down the next enfilade. 500 yards in either direction from a perfectly placed gun emplacement or artillery emplacement, supported by infantry and even militia. This section here, cut into the rampart, looks as if a gun emplacement might have been put in here during the Napoleonic Wars. Obviously the pillbox behind us wasn't there. There is another one the opposite side. As you can see, this is a mirror of the other cutaway in the rampart. It's obvious that this was designed, and there would have been, I think, an emplacement here looking down that enfilade and opposite to its counterpart just behind us. Strategically, this was a really clever idea by Lt-Col John Brown. To cross the canal, an invading army would have either had to swim, which just wasn't practical, or bring small boats over the marsh and row across. Any boats attempting to cross would have been destroyed in short order if they attempted to cross the heavily defended canal. Station houses or guard houses were built at every bridge along the canal. Another of the roles of the soldiers posted in these houses was to control the smuggling, which was rife on the Romney Marsh at that time. The soldiers, however, were often corrupt and could easily be bribed by the smugglers with either money or contraband goods. Shortly after the construction of the canal, preventative officers were also employed on the marsh to catch the smugglers. While still easy to bribe, the officers were paid according to the number of smugglers they caught, which provided a greater incentive to carry out their duties properly. After the war, a barge service was established from Hythe to Rye. In 1877, the government abandoned the canal and leased it to the Lords of the Level of Romney Marsh. Today, the canal is now used by the Environment Agency to manage water levels across much of the marsh, and it is vital to the area's flood protection. This is one of the concrete pillboxes that were placed at the most optimum points along the enfilades along the Royal Military Canal, and they were put here for the Second World War just in case the Germans managed to get across. Of course they didn't either. The pillboxes were shaped and placed for optimum efficiency and field of fire. A beach landing by the Germans would have involved a crossing of the Romney Marsh. It's not good terrain for tanks or infantry, both of which would have been attacked by the Royal Air Force artillery and infantry. So we're inside the pillbox. Apologies for the bumpy camera, but this is the view looking out. Up the canal, wait for the camera to adjust, there we go. So in here with your Bren gun, looking out there, or forwards. Camera will adjust in a moment. There we are, look at that. You know, goodness me. And inside, there's this brick structure, which you can walk all the way around. And this was not built, as you might think, as a support for the roof. This was here so that if somebody was coming in through the doorway with a gun, you had some form of cover from within. Well, it's a good job we've got the wellies.
Yeah, it's mucky as hell in there.
Just walk straight through it again.
Oh, well,
Tell you what we're doing in there.
Looking,
yeah. I don't like the bathroom much.
No soap.
Well, I don't know what you had on your shoes, but it was green.
Oh, it's green, it's disgusting. I've still got loads, I've got to clean them all off. Ugh.
Lovely, lovely.
They were nice and red, these small...
There's more mud in this puddle than there is cow do.
Oh, I don't know.
I'm going to find a different puddle. We're just outside of Appledore, just over here. A lovely Kentish town. And we're probably on the part of the canal that's farthest from the sea. And over here behind us is one of them, what was one of the many pillboxes, concrete pillboxes that were all the way along the Royal Military Canal. There's perhaps only a handful of them remaining today, but you can see just what a defensive position it commanded in both directions of the canal. And anything coming up the waterway, or indeed across the fields here, seaward the way that way, would have been in mortal peril. When Lt-Col John Brown conceived the idea of the Royal Military Canal, he presented his plans to the Prime Minister, who at the time was William Pitt the Younger. And William Pitt sat down with the Duke of York and both enthusiastically endorsed the plans. They appointed the renowned canal engineer John Rennie to get cracking. And in October 1804, they began. But by the following May, they'd only done 6 miles of canal. So William Pitt gave him the sack. Lt-Col John Brown was appointed commander-in-chief of the entire project. He took on a whole load more navvies. He also got a load of military personnel, infantrymen, to help with the building. The navvies dug it all out. The infantrymen shaped the ramparts all the way along. By October 21st, 1805, it really didn't matter because the Royal Navy had decimated the Franco-Spanish fleets. Admiral Nelson had deviated from normal military tactics, naval tactics, and instead of going 2 lines, battering one another to bits with big cannons, and lots of them, instead he drove a line of ships directly to a T-shape to the Franco-Spanish ships. They split into 2 wedges, headed off by the Victory and the Royal Sovereign, and absolutely flattened the fleet. Not a single British ship was lost, although the HMS Victory came real close. And tragically, as we all know, Lord Nelson was shot by a French musketeer and lay dying inside the Victory. 15 minutes before he passed away, he was informed that they were victorious. And I believe his words were, "Thank God I have done my duty." The commander-in-chief of the Franco-Spanish fleet, Villeneuve, he was captured, as was his flagship. And Villeneuve actually attended Lord Nelson's funeral. How about that? You wouldn't want to be in one of those when there was stuff coming from either directions giving it rock all, would you? Towards the end of our first day's filming, we arrived at Iden Lock Cottage. The night was closing in, so please excuse the lack of good light. The Lock Cottage was built by the War Office to house the officers that guarded the Royal Military Canal at the beginning of the 1800s, when it was feared that Napoleon was going to invade the south coast of England. During World War II, it was used again by officers guarding the canal and the approaches to the area. The present owner's great-aunt lived here from 1945 until 1991. She was one of the original Marsh farmers. She earned a living from farming just 40 head of sheep. She was an avid Women's Institute member and only ever rode a bicycle. Iden Lock separates the Royal Military Canal from the River Rother. Today it is not operational as a lock, but just as a flood management sluice. The last 2 days it has been raining and raining and raining. Both the Royal Military Canal and the River Rother, away to our left, are very, very swollen. The sluice gate is up and allowing the canal to empty, or at least to drain down a bit. These look like gates that could be lowered into place to hold the Royal Military Canal back, or possibly the river. Here is where the Iden Lock opens up to the River Rother. Today the Rother is really high, really swollen. We've had rain on rain upon rain the last couple of days. Both the waterways are seriously impacted with way more water than either of them requires. This is day 2 of our filming of the Royal Military Canal. And what a change in the weather. The sun's come out. We finished yesterday with filming just a little further up here at the lockkeeper's cottage on the Iden Lock. And light was failing, and there was a few spots of rain, and it was a bit nippy. So that's why it's different today. This might be why I'm squinting a bit, because it's bright sunshine. Yay! Anyway, here behind us are the sluice gates that control the water between the non-tidal side of the Rother and the tidal side. At the moment, because of 2 or 3 days of rain upon rain, the water levels are the same, irrespective of whatever the tide is doing. Anyway, these great big gates here can be wound up or down to control the water. So ordinarily when the tide is down, they'll be down to stop the canal emptying. Or in fact here, the River Rother emptying, because it's just up there that it would connect to the Royal Military Canal. You can't get up. I don't think you can get a boat through that way now, because there's a sluice gate up there. But what a difference. The water levels are so high, seriously flooded, really, really, really high up. We've got some great drone footage to look at too. Have a look at that. The sluice here maintains water levels in the River Rother above the point at which it is tidal. Below here, when it isn't in flood, it's just a muddy trickle at low water, and certainly not navigable by any kind of boat. When the Royal Military Canal was completed, it was possible for barges and sailboats to navigate from below Rye all the way to Hythe. The southeast coastline has been under threat of the French long before Napoleon considered an invasion. King Henry VIII had problems with the French too. So he had Camber Castle built, also known locally as Winchelsea Castle. It is a 16th century device fort built near Rye to protect the Sussex coast of England against French attack. It was preceded on the same site by a small round artillery tower constructed by Henry VIII between 1512 and 1514. It overlooked Camber Anchorage and the entrance to Rye Harbour. In 1539, tensions with France were on the rise again, which spurred King Henry VIII to rethink his coastal defence plans. Camber Castle was rebuilt and extended over the next year under the direction of the Moravian engineer Stefan von Haschenperg. With unsatisfactory results, further work took place between 1542 and 1543, and at considerable expense, to bring the project to a satisfactory design, resulting in a large concentric artillery fort with a central keep surrounded by 4 circular bastions and a circular entrance bastion built from stone and brick. The completed castle was equipped with 28 brass and iron artillery guns, plus a garrison of 28 men commanded by a captain. It is possible the castle saw service in 1545 when a French fleet attacked the coast, but its operational value was short-lived. The Camber and the surrounding harbours began to silt up, becoming unusable by shipping, and the coastline receded away from the fort, eventually placing it well inland. Furthermore, the fort had been superseded by newer European military designs even before it had been completed, and peace with France later in the century removed much of the requirement for the fort. The castle remained operational until 1637, when it was closed by King Charles I. With the outbreak of civil war in 1642, much of the fortification was dismantled by parliamentary forces to prevent it being used by the Royalists. What we're looking at here is the River Brede, or at least a quick connection from the lower end of the Royal Military Canal to it. Behind us is the last and shorter section of the Royal Military Canal all the way over to Pett Level. And at the moment the canal is so swollen it's emptying into the River Brede here. There's a lot of water coming through. And away through the trees there you can just make out Camber Castle. this is the last section and smaller section of the Royal Military Canal. Over here is a little sluice that controls the water level in here, allowing it to empty, when necessary, into the River Brede, which is the other side of the road there. And at the moment, there's a lot of water that's going through. That way is the first enfilade on this side of the canal. Seriously bright sunlight. There are 8 more enfilades between Winchelsea Sluice and the southwestern end of the Royal Military Canal, leading almost down to Winchelsea Beach at Pett Level. The beach is a highly popular spot for holidaymakers and locals out for a day or just a walk. Since it was constructed, negligence and time have taken their toll. The canal is not as wide as its original 60 feet and it's nowhere near 9 feet deep. The canal is also a haven for some of the special wildlife found on the Romney Marsh. Kingfishers can be regularly seen, and during the summer month, the canal comes alive with dragonflies and noisy marsh frogs. The full length of the canal has a public footpath along it, and it makes for an excellent waymarked long-distance trail. 100 yards down from the end of the military canal, we're into cliff country, and it's very cliffy along here all the way down to well beyond Eastbourne. There's a few bits with beaches like Norman's Bay and Pevensey Bay, and you've got there's Eastbourne Beach, but that was quite a settlement there, and well defended. And you had Martello Towers, a lot of them all the way along there too. So putting ashore his Army d'Angleterre would have been difficult indeed. It's quite obvious to see why Romney Marsh was the chosen point to land, or at least from the British perspective, that was where he was expected to land, and military strategists would have looked at all the other possible locations and the difficulties of coming ashore because of cliffs or what other obstacles lay in their way. Romney Marsh was the likely one. Lt-Col John Brown designed his canal. It got built. Not a shot was ever fired from any Martello tower. Nobody ever got as far as the Royal Military Canal. And in later years, it was often criticised at the cost of building the whole thing. It was £240,000, I believe, £250,000. So instead there was a barge cargo carrying service from Rye all the way to Hythe, and there were some tolls that were charged that recouped a little bit of the cost, but really not that much of it. In any event, the Royal Military Canal was built. The purpose was ideal. It was well constructed. It was well conceived. And had they got across that far, it would have been very effective deterrent and stoppage. If you like, it would have been the Trident missile of the day, wasn't it? It was a deterrent. It would have been too difficult for Napoleon to have got across and landed and wreaked havoc on our shores of England.
Well, we started on the beach, we've ended on the beach, and just over there is the end of the Royal Military Canal.
And how long was it?
28.5 miles.
28.5 miles long. And we haven't travelled all of it. We couldn't. We've been by car. But we have seen just how effective it would have been against an invasion should the Frenchies decided to come across.
Yep.
So today, ending our journey on the Royal Military Canal, we're at Pett Level. And there's cliffs over here. There's the sea. You'll probably see the sea. It's just over there. It's a nice sunny day today, but it hasn't always been like that, has it?
No, we've had wind, rain, hail, no snow.
No snow. Thank God for no snow.
No snow.
But it's been tricky.
Well, the weather forecast man was wrong.
He was definitely wrong the whole time. Originally it was looking like New Year's Day was going to be the best day and this one was going to be rubbish. And New Year's Day was great, a little bit of rain towards the end. And today, the forecast yesterday for today was awful. But it's been great. Not a drop of rain. There's a few clouds, not very many. The sun was out a minute ago. It's just hiding at the minute. But it's been nice, hasn't it?
It has been nice.
Absolutely nice. So look, last week we said we were going to go and film those 3 aqueducts just a bit north of Stratford-upon-Avon. But we got an invite for New Year's Eve for some very special friends of ours in Newenden. Ian and Christine, hope you're watching. We had a great time. Fantastic. So next week, we're heading off to a little bit north of Stratford-upon-Avon and we get those 3 aqueducts in. The Edstone Aqueduct is a really, really good one, and there's 2 others to boot too. So, meanwhile, we're going to ask you, please subscribe to our video and
like our video.
Like the video too. And come back again soon. We look forward to seeing you. Cheerio.
See you soon.
And Happy New Year.